In this video, we will understand the Linux architecture. When Linus Torvalds created the Linux operating system, he did not really create an operating system, he just created the kernel. What do you mean by that? Well, he created the architecture for the coremost components of any operating system. So a layer which can speak to the hardware. That is what the kernel is. The hardware over here can be my printer, can be my monitor, can be my motherboard, can be so many different things. Let's put it this way. Kernel is the mechanism by which a software can speak to the hardware. But how do you speak to the kernel? Well, you speak to the kernel using a component called as shell or a software called as shell. So that is your door to speaking to the kernel. That is your door speaking to the operating system. If you're good at shell, that means the operating system or the kernel is under your control. Now the advantage which Linux holds is many constituents within the kernel can directly be spoken to by the user, unlike in a Windows or other operating systems. Windows is more of a closed operating system. Linux being open source and the architecture being more easily understandable, you have an ability to directly speak and, if required, even modify the components of the kernel. Our applications sit on top of this. Our applications may also use shell in the background, whether it's a user-based application or just a simple terminal-based application. So to understand Linux as an operating system and to get accustomed to using it, you have to interface with the shell. And that is what will be our target in this module. Now, one another major component that we need to understand here is the Linux file structure. The Linux file structure is in a hierarchical form. What do you mean by that? Imagine a tree. A tree has certain branches. Those branches have more branches and some leaves. Those more branches have some more branches and leaves and so on. Now uproot the tree and invert it. Now what do you have at the top? Root, isn't it? And then you keep going below. You have some branches, and within those branches you have more branches and leaves, some more branches and leaves, and so on. Now that's how a Linux file structure looks like. Root at the top, and the branches are my folders here. So we have a lot of folders. And within those folders, I can have more folders or files. And within those folders, again some more folders and files, and so on. So see a lot of folders here, /bin, /boot, /dev, /etc, etc. Under the /home folder, we have the folder for our beloved friend John Doe. And probably John's friend Jane also has a folder under this. So every user may have a folder under the home folder. Now within John's home folder, John may have some more folders like desktop, music, etc. This spreads out like a tree. Files and folders, and within folders, some more files and folders. And within those folders, some more files and folders, and so on. The primary folder at the top is called as root. That is why the Linux file system is known as the inverted tree structure. So now if you have to know the address of Jane's or John's desktop, it would be /home John desktop. Linus Torvalds likes to pronounce Linux as Linux. So it's up to you on what pronunciation you choose. We have all kinds of pronunciation. Linux, Linux, Linux. It depends really on the user. But Linux users in general like to use the term directory instead of a folder. Though there are subtle differences between them, but in today's world, they are interchangeable. Directory has always been the naming choice by most of the command-based or shell-based users, and folder is the choice by the graphical-based users. So you might find me saying directory more often than folder. Now that we have some understanding about what a Linux kernel is, what Linux shell is, and how does the file system of Linux look like from a layman perspective. So why don't we now get into understanding the Linux shell and the command prompt.